again.
Good evening. My name is Sam Fletcher, and I'm the Executive Director of NASW New York State. Please keep putting in the chat boxes where you're from. I'm getting distracted going over there and reading where everyone's from. It's so exciting to have you all join us tonight. I will just be talking for a few minutes before I hand this over to our facilitators. I want to give you a brief history of the revolution and what we're doing here. This actually came into being from one of our student board members who approached Amelia and I in July. She just wasn't happy with some things and thought there were some things that needed to be addressed. So we met with her, and by the end of that meeting, this was born. And we decided, like, you know what, we're not happy with things. Let's just change the profession. And we can do that. You have power. The BIPOC social workers have power. So let's do it. And so that's really where this was born. And we came up with the idea, and we kind of laid out the beginning of this. And then we met with a fairly large group of BIPOC social workers, about 40 in New York State. We rolled out this plan to them, asked for feedback, and then we just implemented it. So our first town hall was focused on the history of BIPOC social workers and racism and the profession of social work, and then also the current experiences of racism in the profession. And then from there, we had our next meeting focused on setting goals for the New York State chapter. So like if we had a racially just chapter, what would that look like? And last month, we started with our schools of social work, which we're continuing this month. And we know we're going to have at least one more session focused on schools of social work. And then we're going to be moving to set goals for clinical practice and macro practice. So right now, what we're doing, we're setting goals. So from our last session, we have 24 goals for schools of social work right now. And we expect to expand that tonight and next month. Once we have all our goals, we're going to move into a new phase, which is going to be work groups. Everything that we do is led by BIPOC social workers. All our facilitators for the town hall are BIPOC social workers, and all the leaders of the work groups will be BIPOC social workers. So this whole movement is planned and led by BIPOC social workers. Now, white allies, you have a place in the revolution as well. And your place is support. So right now during the goal setting phase, while we're doing the town halls, your goals are to listen and to learn. And when I say yours, I mean ours, because I am someone who has white privilege. So that's my job as well, is to sit and listen and learn, and to take what we learn, and we can already start implementing changes. We can change ourselves through self-reflection, and then we can start to change our behavior and our thoughts, and start to try to change our communities and the environments where we're at, whether it's a school of social work or an organization or somewhere else where you're at. So that's our role. I want to thank the BIPOC social workers. First of all, we have a planning group who meet together and we lay out the schedule, and there are co-facilitators that we see from month to month. I want to thank them, and I want to thank every BIPOC social worker who has joined us and who has contributed. This is possible because of you. And my hope is that this is a healing space for you, and that you have hope, and you are creating change. You're already creating change. And as we move forward, and as we get to the dissemination phase where our BIPOC social workers will be disseminating this information to schools of social work and to other stakeholders, and demanding change and demanding racial justice, you have power. And again, I just want to thank you. We have a treat tonight. So we have our facilitators, Afsha Malik. Afsha is a board member. I've been working with her for over a year since I've been at NASW, and I am thrilled she's joining us. She's a recent graduate, so she's very, very familiar with schools of social work. And then we have my partner, Don Knight Thomas. Don Knight Thomas is who I have been doing my racial justice work. We started together, and I've done the most racial justice work with her. And we had one of our co-facilitators had to back out last minute. She was really upset because she's been very intricate, Alex, but we will see Alex. She will be facilitating again, so don't worry. But Don was nice enough to jump in. So I'm going to hand it over now to Afsha, and you'll meet Afsha.
Hi, everyone. It's so great to be here with you all tonight. So like Sam kindly introduced me, my name is Afsha and I'm a recent graduate. I got my BSW and MSW. So yes, different experience, a broad range of experiences with schools of social work. And I'm happy to have this conversation with you. But before we begin, I'd like Dawn to just take the mic and provide some context, and then I'll do a little tidbit and then we'll begin.
Thank you, Afsha. Good evening, everybody. I'm Dawn Knight Thomas. It's so nice having you with us tonight so we can all engage in some important conversations. I'm very excited to be part of this revolutionary group that is really transforming the discipline of social work. As we know, social work was built on systems of oppression and racism, and we as a collective and our clients are still dealing with the impact of systemic racism on many levels today. Even our history as BIPOC people being a part of social work has been ignored and not placed in the history books, but we existed. We have always done social work. And so at this moment in time, our generation of social workers refuse to be invisible anymore, and we are picking up the mantle to bring elements of truth into the 21st century. This generation of social workers will prevent future BIPOC social workers, BIPOC students, and BIPOC students from experiencing the things that we have. We will be a part of the change that is necessary to make social work the all-inclusive profession that it can be. And it's just not rhetoric or talk. We're doing the work so we can make this happen. I thank you all for being here tonight and for all your work and your commitment to this process. Back to you, Afsha.
Thank you, Dawn. So like Dawn said, we know this is not going to be easy and it's clearly long overdue. So I just want to reiterate your commitment and willingness to take part of these town halls in such an open, vulnerable, and supportive way is what makes this all so much more revolutionary, in my opinion. It was at the first town hall when someone spoke up and said professors are the most dangerous, more dangerous than politicians. This really stuck with me, and I thought it was appropriate to reshare tonight. Our professors, from as early as 5 years old, have total control of our environment and understanding of the world. They decide what books we read, what lessons to teach, and ultimately the curriculum we're taught. Schools and professors may not be as impressionable once we enter our BSW or MSW curriculum, yet they still hold some type of effect on students, particularly BIPOC students. And so we want to explore that with you tonight. For today's call, we're interested in hearing about the curriculum at your schools, its impact, what went well, what didn't go well, and ultimately any suggestions that you have. So without delaying this further, let's go.
Who would like to be the first person to share your experience at your School of Social Work?
I'll share. Hi, my name's Kenya. I went to school at the University of Pennsylvania. We called it the racism sequence. I think it's everybody's diversity sequence that we have to take thanks to the Council on Social Work Education. But we called it the racism sequence. I thought what was interesting about it was all taught by people of color, but I don't know that made them equipped to teach it. And so what ended up happening is we read a lot of books like, the social contract, the racial contract, when affirmative action was white, a lot of these kinds of books. And what I found is that it made a lot of people uncomfortable, and it made a lot of my white counterparts uncomfortable. And I don't know that we had the ability, nor the time, nor the way to really delve into what that looked like for everyone. And so we're sitting in these classes, myself as a person of color, as a Black woman, kind of listening to my classmates say these kind of really wild things, right? Like, oh, I think racial profiling is okay. And I'm sitting here like, whoa, excuse you, what are you talking about? And I found myself personally feeling so incensed, right? And trying to calm myself because I have to be mindful of what it means to be an angry Black woman in these very, very white spaces. And I was in a place where I knew that I had to be mindful of everyone else's feelings, no matter what they were saying. And, if luckily, I guess I had a professor who was a little bit more in tune and could kind of help regulate that. But for my other classmates, they didn't have that. And so I very much had a friend who was in class and was the spokesperson for all Black people in a graduate program. Like, that just shouldn't be happening.
Mm.
And then you have like the conversations around like, well, then it became, well, what about women? What about this group? What about that group? And it's like, well, if we're going to really look at the history of this country and what it looks like, right? We're talking about the almost eradication of indigenous people. We're talking about the enslavement of people from the continent of Africa, and how the systems of oppression we have today were basically born out of that. I don't know if the curriculum just didn't voice that properly, or if we were just really catering to everyone's uncomfortableness. It's an uncomfortable conversation, and we all know that. But it just got to a point where I found myself frustrated by the fact that even in a space where we're supposed to be talking about these oppressed people that we would be working with, it's still centered back to, well, what about me as a white woman? I'm oppressed too. And it was just like, are you kidding me today? Like, we couldn't escape it. And I just don't know if people have the wherewithal, or how we even start to have that conversation about how do you address that feeling of, the oppression Olympics. Like, why are we playing oppression Olympics in a social work class?
Yeah. Thank you so much for your comments. You said a lot of very good things, because you shouldn't be playing oppression Olympics. Was my oppression worse than yours? But how can we get white people to understand that it's not a competition? It's learning the history of BIPOC people, having an understanding of what that history encompasses, and sitting down and really listening. And so I'm sorry that you had to experience invalidation as you spoke in your class, and as you were even learning through the racism sequence. Interesting. You said you weren't sure if the professors were equipped to actually teach the course. Why did you say that? I'm just wondering.
Well, I think it's that I wasn't sure, just because, so most of the professors were Black male identified people. There was one other professor, I can't remember who she was, but I don't know if the equipped is the right word. I don't know if they were ready to handle the blowback, or if maybe they were ready to handle the blowback and they were just tired of it. Because they'd all been teaching there for a while. I imagine that maybe wasn't the first time they had received that kind of blowback, and it just kept building. And so when you have someone who may say something that's a little bit funky, you got to make a decision, like, how do you address it, or can you address it? Because then the question becomes, I can't speak for Black men, obviously, but I would imagine there's some thoughts around, like, how do I approach this, and how do I not make this go bigger than what it has to? This in the same way that I had to make a decision about, like, how do I want to address this so that I'm not seen as an angry Black woman, instead of someone who's just basically challenging kind of a thought that should be challenged. Because if this is the thought process you have in this classroom, I now have to worry. I went to school in Philadelphia, which is a predominantly minority city.
Mhm.
I'm now worried about who you're working with in the community. And are you, as the person who's supposed to help them, now impeding their ability to move forward because of your problematic thinking?
Mhm.
And so it's this weird place that you kind of have to be in. I thought going into social work school, like my friend before I went told me, you know, you're not going to learn about social work, you're going to learn about yourself. And I think that's a very true statement. But how do you sit in class listening to people with these problematic statements, knowing that they're getting ready to go out and work with these vulnerable populations, and knowing that that person that they encounter may not get the service they need or get the help they need or be pushed forward or whatever, or the support they need, because you've got problematic thinking that no one was ever allowed to or felt like they couldn't challenge you on because your feelings were paramount in that moment.
Mhm. Well, thank you so much. And I'll tell you this as well. When I was in graduate school, I had the same thought in regard to not seeing my counterparts, my classmates who were, for some, they were just not prepared to go out and work with people of color in particular. And like you, the comments that were made where they were just so inappropriate. And, you know, when I went to social work school, I thought people were like-minded. And it didn't take long for me to see that people were at different levels in regard to just cultural competence. And for some, they're not even trying to really become conscious of their biases. And so it's very frustrating to sit in the classroom and have people say remarks that make you, now where you're willing to be open and share your thoughts, you're going to pull back and say, I'm not sharing with these people because either someone spoke about being attacked at the last meeting because of something that she said, you know, you just don't feel safe, basically, in the spaces that they set up for you. So thank you so much for sharing.
I'd like to say something.
Yeah.
There's a book out called White Fragility, and it's written by a white man whose name I don't remember right now. But it's a book that all Caucasians should read, as well as all minorities. What it talks about is why Caucasians can't understand what we go through. And he talks about how from childhood, from birth, they are set up with a certain perspective of their lives, that they are taught that they are more privileged, that they are above, and so they're thinking, unless you make a concerted effort, and even those that do make a concerted effort have difficulty in understanding all that minorities go through. I think all social work students should really read that book. I think it's a great book for both Caucasians and minorities. White Fragility, it's called.
Yeah. I think that's by Beverly D'Angelo.
Yes, yes.
Mhm. Yes. Thank you so much for your comment. And this is a resource that could, again, like you said, benefit definitely white, but also people of color to just learn. You know, when white people grow up, they're taught that they're better than, as it pertains to people of color, that we're less than, that they're smarter than, they do things better than. And We're invalidated at every turn. What we say isn't taken with authenticity. We're ignored in the classrooms. I know that happened to me. I'm making a statement and I'm ignored, like I didn't even say anything. And so thank you for sharing that resource and for your comment as well. Thank you. Anybody else want to share an experience? You know, being a people of color in classrooms that are predominantly white, it's very difficult. It's not, I know when I would go into the classroom, I would have to really get my psyche, my mind together before going into the classroom because I know what was going to be taking place in regard to people looking to me as the Black woman to represent everybody who is Black. And that's not the case. And so just being able to sit in the classroom and just learn like white folks, sitting there, learning, digesting the material. Not having to say, okay, who's going to say something that's going to be really ignorant? Who's going to say something that's really going to traumatize me because of what they're saying? Who's going, because I just knew it was coming in each class. And so I'm going to be quiet.
No, thank you, Dawn, for sharing. And like exactly that, and then also what Kenya was saying about at the same time trying to protect yourself and take care of other people's feelings while you're trying to learn. When you think you're in a like-minded institution where everyone has the same values and perceives the same things, and then it is kind of a cultural shock when you go into predominantly white institutions and you're in the social work program, and then people say crazy things, about Blue Lives Matter, like in a class. I had that happen once, and it's like, what? Like, are you in the same class as I'm in? How is that happening? So it's really crazy. Does anyone have any other experiences that are similar to Kenya's, that are different, or other resources like Lois provided, like White Fragility, which is a great book, to share with us, and how we can kind of address the curriculum and the gaps of the curriculum, so we're not experiencing these kinds of things.
Well, I'd like to go next if that's okay. I'm Bonnie. I'm my pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm in Chicago. I graduated from Loyola University Chicago School of Social Work back in 2013. I don't recall having any Black instructors in my 2 years of grad school. And the thing that stands out to me is that in my, I think it was like a clinical social work 101 type class, we had an assignment where we had to watch a movie and analyze a character. And the list of films that we were given were all about white people. There were literally no people of color in the film choices. And so I brought it up to the instructor, and it didn't occur to her that somebody would be looking for something else. And it was a blind spot. She corrected it. She allowed me to pick a film. But at the end of the semester, she said that in the future she would be a lot more mindful of the choices that she gives the students. So I think it had a happy ending. I don't know what happened after I left.
Mm-hmm.
but just the fact that she had that blind spot in like a very basic required social work class. And our class was pretty ethnically diverse. But the fact that we didn't have any Black male or female instructors was something that didn't occur to me at the time. So I, went on into my postgraduate or my career after graduation. But yeah, it's those blind spots. Somebody has to say, you're leaving some people out, or a lot of communities out, is an issue. And, Loyola's a pretty, big deal school. Jesuits are supposed to be very about social justice, just as a basic tenet of the Society of Jesus. So they should be doing better than they have been. And I would I don't know, I saw somebody posted that they are a student at Fordham. I think Fordham's also a Jesuit school. I'd like to hear from other social work students at Jesuit schools to see if they have similar situations or if their situation is better. But yeah, I'll stand down. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you for sharing. And you're right. You would think that professors would know to be inclusive in the materials that they're actually providing to students. And so I'm glad you said something to her to make her aware of that fact. So maybe the person from Fordham, would you like to speak and share what's going on at Fordham?
Well, hi everyone. I didn't write in the chat, but I am also in Fordham University, in my second to last year. And I could say that Fordham has, in just now with everything that's going on, and you really can't ignore it. You shouldn't have been ignoring it for years and years and years now, right? But you really just can't ignore it. It's every day. Just now that they start doing a push on race and oppression and racial injustice. But to be honest, I'm an online student. I have never seen a course for the online curriculum. There wasn't a requirement for it, and there wasn't even an option for it. And that shocked me because I've been in the field for a little over a decade. And I can count on one hand how many families I've worked with that were white. I don't understand how we don't have a class that will teach individuals, everything that goes on in our society, racial oppression, systemic oppression. So Fordham hasn't really been, in these past 2.5 years that I was there, Fordham hasn't really been supportive, I felt. And it was something I was looking at my field seminar courses and just seeing who, which students were a part of it, and hearing where their placements were and hearing their background in the field. And I noticed many of my classmates that were Black and Latinos and had many years in the field, we were getting placed in not-for-profit organizations with internships that really weren't master's level. I do not feel I had an experience where I can say, oh, I had a master's level internship. I honestly felt that these placements were things I could do right out of high school, to be honest. And when I would hear white students talking about their placements, and they're not, they're transitioning from other fields like business field, law, or pharmaceuticals, whatever, they're placed in government agencies, hospitals, schools, DOE, and I was it just seemed something seemed off there. I can say Fordham. I haven't felt any support from Fordham whatsoever.
So you were saying that you noticed that students of color were placed.
We were placed when we were sharing our internship experiences, we were really placed in internships that it felt like a job I can get right out of high school with a high school diploma. I didn't need a master's level education to be there. I didn't even need a bachelor's level education to be in that job placement. And we started realizing, a group of us, I'm not gonna say all of us, because I didn't go to class with everybody, but a group of us noticed that, we're coming into this program with years in the field. We're not coming into the program with a resume that's saying I worked customer service and I wanted to, do the MSW program, which is perfectly fine. But when we're getting these internships, can you find me an internship that actually matches my experience? Because now it's just starting to look off when I notice that other individuals are getting these experiences at places that, who doesn't want to work in a hospital, or where the money is. And not to say this is a money field, but let's be serious. Not for profit. We know the deal with not for profit if you've been in the field. So it's just why am I not getting internships? Why are we not getting internships that are more compatible with our experience? It seemed a little fishy, and then like I said, they just started putting a push on racial injustice, and they're starting now. So I'm not going to say, they haven't done anything. They're starting to, recognize what's going on. But I just feel like they're very late in the game for a social work program.
Thank you for that. Yeah, you bring up such a great point. And it is, I completely agree, it is fishy. Why is it predominantly BIPOC people that are not getting those kind of internships and you guys recognize and you're seeing and you're feeling your white counterparts that are in those kind of positions? And that alone is frustrating, especially, if you kind of take it to another level and address administration and what is that going to response going to be, and that also presents barriers as well, and how is that going to play out, and are you, and who's willing to risk and do that. So yeah, and then I had another, and then you mentioned another great point about a lot of these schools, especially schools of social work, commit to diversity and racial justice, right? Especially with BLM and how since George Floyd's death, there's been statements on social media addressing schools and holding them accountable, but what work is actually being done? Are students, particularly BIPOC students, a part of those decision-making processes? Is there accountability? Is there transparency? And I think that's also something that we have to look at, because schools can be having these great statements, but if BIPOCs aren't involved and there's no transparency, we're going to be back to square one. And yeah, it's really great you're starting now, but what does that mean if it's not 100% and people are still being left out and voices are still being silenced? So thank you for sharing.
Thank you. The other thing about Fordham, I'm sorry, is how diverse is your faculty?
Hi, I'm Sianna. I was the other student at Fordham. So I'm in my last year now. I'm in the hybrid half online, half on campus model. This was my first year where I had my Black professor. I am an African-American student. So that was also a little discouraging when I first started at Fordham, that I didn't see any faculty that looked like me. Also, the campus that I'm at in Long Island is a predominantly white campus. So sorry, I have my infant with me.
No worries.
So usually I've been the only person of color in the classroom, which has made certain conversations uncomfortable. Like recently, to piggyback off the previous speaker, you know, they have been pushing certain initiatives in regards to being more proactive and speaking up against the injustice that's taking place. But when it's brought into classrooms, I feel like students are silent. Professors seem uncomfortable themselves to bring up certain issues, which then when I speak, sometimes it makes me feel like I'm tired of talking about the issue because this is something I have to deal with all the time in work and other environments. So why when I come to school and I'm in an environment that's supposed to be helping people that look like me, these conversations aren't handled properly, or yeah, they're just not handled properly in my eyes. I will also say that I feel like at the campus that I'm at, a lot of the curriculum is mainly geared towards clinical work, which is great. But I think that also shapes the how racism is also addressed in classrooms, because they're so focused on a specific population. A lot of my classmates only want to work in private practice with certain groups, maybe those in the opioid crisis, or, you know, a lot of the internships out here where I'm placed are in very like white neighborhoods, prestiged areas. And there's not a lot of focus, I feel like, on working with a diverse group of people in the curriculum. I feel like the curriculum is very focused on clinical work, but with a certain population.
So all populations are not represented in the curriculum.
Correct.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And what you said too, this has come up before, a professor being uncomfortable to really talk about the issues. And with that, the professor may not be hitting on important aspects of whether it's history, BIPOC families, communities, and not really being able to go deeper in regard to allowing the class to really learn the way they need to learn about the different communities. And okay, thank you. Who's next? Someone from another school?
Hi, John. I can go.
Hey.
Good to see you guys and other familiar faces. Sam had mentioned something about imposter syndrome in the chat, and so I wanted to speak on that a little bit. So I just finished my MSW program at the University of Michigan. And thank you. And if you don't know, the U of M School of Social Work is the #1 school of social work, which is like really doesn't mean anything, I learned. But when I was starting there, I was super I felt like a fish out of water. Like I felt like I didn't belong there. Just the university itself, not even the program. And then when on our first day, like during orientation, they had us all together in this like auditorium, and they were showing like the demographics of our cohort. There was like 450 of us. Most of us were between like 21 or 22 and like 27, and then there was like a small group of people who were older adults, and then they showed like the racial demographic breakdown. And that was pretty interesting because I realized like, and also from state. So I was like one of like the very few people from New York. I was also very young. When I started the program, I was 21, and or I was 22. And I also like was just coming straight from undergrad. And I was Black. And so there was just a lot of things that, you know, set aside some differences for me. And I remember the first paper I had to write, like it took me so long to write it because I was so nervous that my writing wasn't going to be good enough, or that I wasn't smart enough, or that I just like wouldn't get the grades that I wanted, and that it stressed me out so much. And I couldn't even believe like how much it was stressing me out. And then I remember sitting in class and listening to people, and just, I was very quiet, very, very quiet the first like month of school, because I am an observer. I just like to see like what I'm working with and you know, what everyone else is offering and bringing to the table. And I realized like, wow, I have like no reason to be concerned at all. And a lot of times I was questioning like how I was in the same program with some of my peers, because I'm like, this doesn't even make sense. But then, and it also just made me think about, you know, all the different obstacles and the hoops that I had to jump through, how hard I had to work to get to where I was, compared to my classmates who were just kind of like, yeah, like I'm here, it's fine, it's great, it's whatever, I'm just go back to my hometown and do this, and it was fine. And I was like, what? Like, this is we're having a completely different experience. And then you sit in class, so you already feel kind of like a difference there. And then you're sitting in class, and we also had to take like a mandatory diversity and social justice class, which was a hot mess. And I remember my professor, who was identified as a Black man, we were talking about Tatiana Jefferson, and we actually like watched the video in class. And I remember I was having such like a physical, like visceral reaction. Like I was so uncomfortable. I was like, there was only maybe like 4 or 5 other people of color in my class. And we're watching that and we're talking about it. And I'm just very upset. So I'm just very quiet. And I want to know like what my peers were going to say about that. And so I always listen to hear what they say before I say anything. And one person said, well, we should try to like empathize with the police officer, because what if that was your client? And I was like, what, girl? No. Like, no. I said, I was like, if that was my client, I would have to remove myself and tell them that like I would need to find him a new social worker, because I just wouldn't be able to show up for him the way he might need me to, just because this is way too close to home, way too personal, and just I couldn't do it. And people were like, yeah, same here. But then there was also a group of students that were like, no, like I think we should be able to empathize like with this person, and we need to be able to treat them just like everyone else. And I'm like, you're completely missing it. Like you're missing the point altogether. Like you're missing that could have been me. Like this person was just in her home. Like that could have been me. That could have been my mom. That could have been like my cousins, my aunts. Like that could have been any single person that I know. And so there's just so much. There's so many layers to imposter syndrome, and just the classroom experience as a person of color and all that it brings. I could talk about this forever.
Thank you so much, Devin, for sharing that. Literally, thank you so much. And like I could share my experiences too. And like, but like it you know, so going to Columbia as a predominantly white institution, I was, you know, in a similar space where, you know, as a young woman, and like I constantly would spend majority of the class just thinking, should I raise my hand? Should I ask this question? Should I answer this question? I'm gonna look stupid. People are gonna think like, why are you asking that? Or like, you know, and like we don't talk about that in schools, and it's not emphasized. And you know, it's such a disservice because the toll it takes on our mental health, and then the fact that we have to still show up for field and complete our assignments, and it's not even regarded. And especially as an advanced standing student, I'm not sure if you were an advanced standing. Yeah, we didn't even take a diversity course because they expected, oh, as an advanced standing, you did that in your BSW curriculum. But going into the city, predominantly, you know, Columbia is in a very wealthy area that has gentrified, you know, half of the city, and they don't talk about that. And like the fact that we weren't even taking those courses, and you're with a cohort that is across so many ranges of age and background, and it was like completely like mind-boggling. I was like, I was doing it to prove it to myself that, you know, I could go into that kind of institution, but at the same time, I was like, I was losing pieces of me because I'm like, I'm not gaining anything of this. So thank you for sharing, because I completely feel the same.
Thank you. Anyone else want to share any of the topics or experiences that you've been hearing, or if you have a different experience you'd like to share?
I could go.
Hey, Brittany.
I just want to say thank you, Devin, for saying everything that I wanted to say. I was behind my icon cheering, and I was like, yes, somebody said it. And I also mentioned in the chat, like, this notion of respectability politics in higher education, of like having the respectable Black person, having the respectable Latino, like these like cookie cutter people in your classroom who just don't make you feel uncomfortable. And then you internalize that and say to yourself, seriously, mom, I'm sorry, my mom. But you take that for yourself and you question like how you show up in a classroom. Like for me, I started during COVID. So I'm coming into the program and I'm just like, I speak in Ebonics. Is that acceptable? Like I also, use a lot of Black and BIPOC literature in my research. Is that acceptable, or do I have to use white researchers? And really questioning whether or not I should be in this program. Like when I started, there was this whole host of BIPOC students in my classroom, and then literally the second week, the class cut in half, and it became a predominantly white institution in a matter of like one day of just like people seeing the class and just leaving. And I think it just comes from the historical context of higher education just not being accessible to people of color. And this just really being like the white man's field and not something that we should be in. So it's like you internalize it and you feel like you shouldn't be there. And therefore you just remove yourself from the equation and limit the actual impact that you can have. So I just wanted to share that.
Picking up on what you're saying, one of the things that we tend to do is, or the culture seems to do, is measure everything by white standards. The basic standard, so you have to live up to that standard. We can't let people do that to us. We have to set our own standard and live up to our own standard, no matter what your professor or anyone else says. And that I think is very important, because that's part of making us trying to make us feel less. You don't meet my standard, so you don't have a standard. Well, we all have standards. All cultures have standards, and they don't necessarily be the same standard as the dominant culture.
I agree, Lois. I think, but sometimes the problem then also becomes, right, like when, let me see, my random experience with respectability politics, I'll try and sum it up quickly. Basically, we were preparing ourselves for like what it would be like to take the licensing exam. And so in one of our classes, we had the one exam, which was stressing everyone out. And so my class, we created this nice little study guide. And we had no problem sharing it with people because we were all taking this test. And so we gave out the study guide. One day as I'm studying with somebody from another class, she says, yeah, look at what this person from my class wrote. I looked at it. It was the work my class did. And we're like, wait, whoa. Not a problem that it's been shared, but why are you taking credit for something that we've done? And so we informed our class. We never told who did it. Eventually, this is when I was still on Facebook, it got out on the Facebook group. I never said a word. The person who did it outed themselves. I never said a word. I ended up getting called into one of the dean's offices because now this person went to the dean complaining that, oh, they feel ostracized, they feel this, they feel that. And I'm being blamed, myself and my counterpart, who happened to be an Indian woman, for how she was feeling about what she did. And in that meeting, the dean looks at me directly and says, and basically used something that happened. Everybody knew it happened. I lost housing during my program. It was a pretty big deal, but looked at me and said, you know, Kenya, I expected more from you as a leader in this community. I was like, wait, pause. Like, are you kidding me? And so like, I'm so frustrated right now, I couldn't even speak. And I ended up going to my field liaison, just saying like, this is not what happened. And I explained what happened. And then so later, my field liaison got another meeting for me, and she was like, oh, well, she left out the part where she told on herself. I said, yeah, but you also never asked me. So like, I felt in that moment that like respectability was being used as a weapon against me. And then the gag is the dean was a white woman. The person that this happened with was a white woman. She actually looked at both of us and said, do you know what it feels like to be ostracized? We were like, are you, what? Like, are those the words that actually just came out of your mouth right now? Like, how is this happening? And the person who was in the room at the time of this meeting was a Black woman who was on staff at the school. And so I felt like, I mean, I think respectability politics are weaponized across the, you know, for many reasons, but in that moment, it was directly weaponized against myself and my classmate for something we didn't do. We literally just wanted to have a resolve because we were angry that our hard work was being taken, and she almost plagiarized it. That wasn't okay. And so it's like, we can try and talk about what it looks like to kind of change that narrative, but sometimes it's so hard when the people in power, meaning our deans and professors and so on and so forth, if they're not willing to honestly make that change, like, what do we really do? As a student, you feel powerless as a student. I mean, thank goodness for my professor, who I was like, yo, Jack, like, this didn't happen. And he was like, yeah, they need to fix that. This isn't okay. But then after that conversation, I can't trust you anymore. I don't want to trust you. Like, there's nothing you can do to really massage that out. You can't assuage my feelings at this point because you just mud stumped all over me in the face of someone who did something wrong and then ran to you to become the victim, and you fell for it without question. You never asked me a question.
Thank you. And that's what happens, unfortunately. And it's unbelievable that administrators would, instead of doing an investigation, just listen to her. There's only one reason why she would be listened to as being correct and why they wanted to chastise you. And it's just because of race. There's no other reason for it. You know, that's not, we just got to call a thing. And because if you were white and she was white, then I bet you they would have brought people together and had the conversation, which should have happened before you were just accused. So once again, you have been through it. And I'm sorry, my sister, that once you just hang in there for that. Did you graduate yet?
Oh yeah, I've long since graduated. I'm now a field instructor because I want to make sure, I saw in the chat earlier where people were, and even just in the conversation earlier about how field experiences have been, and I try to make sure that at least the students I get, especially my bachelor's level students, they have better experiences than what I've been told that some of their classmates get, because I do, even with everything that happened in social work school, I still really love the profession for so many reasons, right? Even with the history of social work, I still love the profession for so many reasons. And so I do take this idea of what it means to kind of like help the next generation of social workers move forward. I take that very personally and very seriously. And so I work to really give the students that are in a place with me for field, I do work to give them the best experience I possibly can, because I recognize how important field is, and you know how important supervision is. So still here.
Yes. And I think that's why BIPOC people are still in social work, because this is our passion. This is our mission. We see it as an extension of who we are, our being. So it's not just, oh, let me just go into so. No, we're talking about our communities. We're talking about our people who are suffering. We're talking about being able to make a difference. We're talking about when we go and knock on the door of a client and they come and they see that you're a BIPOC person, how happy they are just to see that you're a person of color that they can talk to, or even the parent. So yes, we are committed to this field and have been for years and years. And so, you know, sometimes we just have to do our own history. They had something, 100 years of social work. I don't know how many people saw that film. It came out maybe about 5 years ago or what have you. So it was a nice history of social work, but they hardly had any Blacks, Latinos, Asians, Native Americans in that like 3-hour film. And so we're here as social workers. And when we're in the classroom, I wasn't respected in the classroom. That's another thing, going back into the curriculum. So people would talk over me, around me, through me. Like, again, I was invisible. Like when I go to the supermarket, if I'm the next in line, the person will go to the person behind me instead of me when I'm next. So it's like, no matter where I'm at, it's like I am an invisible woman. See, we're not invisible as BIPOC people. We refuse to be. Because just like anybody else, we have a lot to offer this field. And they need us. They need our wisdom. They need our experiences. Our clients, most importantly, they need us. And so you're not running us away from this field. Like who just said that, Kenya? Just loving the field. And therefore, no one's going to take you out of social work. And I feel the same way.
I think Sebastian had his hand up. If you want to still pitch in.
Yeah. Are you able to hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Hi everyone. I graduated from SUNY Albany this past May, and I'm similar to Devin. I am also here at the University of Michigan. So I kind of just wanted to, what you just said, Dawn, like about, you know, they need our experiences. It's kind of what I'm about to share about imposter syndrome. Like I am in my 8th week here now. And for about the first 5-6 weeks, it was very difficult because, you know, especially with coronavirus and everything is both hybrid and you know, we can go in person if we would like to. I can look out my window and maybe count on one hand Black or brown people that I see in Ann Arbor or that I see when on campus. And that was something that was really difficult for me to deal with. And it really played on my emotions for a long time. And thankfully I had Devin to speak with and, you know, talk about these experiences. But even in the diversity and social justice course that we had, I am one of 3 BIPOC students in that class. And that is the most I have, and I'm taking 5 this semester. So that for me was very shocking. And I really tugged with this difficulty of wanting to share my experiences, but only for whenever I felt ready, or more for me to kind of share rather than it being as the whole voice of all Latinos or all brown people. And I think that is something that it's true, like, you know, I felt a lot of imposter syndrome of why am I here in the top school of social work? You know, I'm similar to Devin, I just turned 22. A lot of my people in my cohort are older than me, have more global experiences, have kind of a set path of what they want to do versus I'm kind of here, you know, bushy-tailed, bright-eyed, excited. I have an idea, but, you know, I'm still figuring everything out. And it felt like in that one class, I was always looked to get my perspective of the brown person versus whenever I felt I was ready to share. But I say this because it is true. Our perspectives are needed, because there came a point when I really sat with myself and said, even if it makes me uncomfortable, I have heard some things that, you know, white students have said that were inexplicable, and honestly, I couldn't have stood there and just let it go by. And even after speaking my mind, I kind of had this moment of, if I wasn't here and if I wasn't comfortable saying this, these students would not have heard my perspective and would have done more malpractice in their journey. So it's kind of like that push and pull of, you know, not wanting to kind of give it away, but also knowing that if you don't share it, these people who have just never seen me before, you know, a brown, immigrant, gay, Jewish individual, they'll never understand. So I think it's a difficult thing to manage and you know, to kind of go back and forth on, but I wanted to just kind of share that because it's, you know, it's really recent in my MSW journey.
Thank you, Sebastian, for sharing. Daniela?
Yeah, I wanted to just share a little bit, actually, sort of, I guess, connected to what Sebastian was just speaking on, because I'm a first generation immigrant and also a DACA recipient. And one of the struggles that I really had in my first year of college, I went to Suffolk Community College for my first 2 years. And I really struggled with finding any help from anyone in terms of like financial aid or anything like that, because it's really hard to, I mean, you can't receive financial aid when you have DACA, but there's other, you know, scholarships and other things you can apply for that are aid. And I was really shocked and kind of upset at the fact that a lot of the you know, faculty and counselors and social workers that I had spoken to had no idea how to connect me to those resources. And it was really, really frustrating. And just the whole idea of DACA was so new, you know, and I remember one time I had a meeting with a counselor, and, you know, my grades were okay, you know, they weren't the best, but I knew that I really wanted to go to Stony Brook University, which is, I'm a senior now at Stony Brook University. And we had a session, and the counselor was like, I don't think you're going to get in. You need a plan B. Like immediately, like didn't consider any other options for me. And it was really, I remember leaving that meeting and feeling so overwhelmed, because I was like, that's my plan, you know, like I need to go there. I don't have a lot of money. I can't leave, you know, I don't want to go to a different state. Like just what worked for me best was this option. It was my first option. And I knew like I think Don was saying, you know, like I had set a standard for myself, and I really was holding myself to that standard. And I felt like it wasn't being, I guess, understood or reciprocated by anyone else, especially that counselor. They just were trying to talk me out of Stony Brook, like as much as they could. And they were like, you really aren't going to, you know, you're not going to be able to get in. It's not going to, it doesn't seem like a path that you should, you know, even try to go for. And I was like, all right, well, you know, I'll try to pass math and I'll figure it out. Thank you. And I walked out of that office, and I was like, well, I'm not going there again. And you know, one of the things that they kept bringing up was like, why don't you try for a different college? Why don't you try for? And I was like, you know, it's just I don't have like any money, and they were like, oh well, you know, maybe take a year off and save up, or you can go to. I'm like, well, I don't know. It's just really difficult. She's like, why don't you apply for financial aid? And again, it was this like like not being knowledgeable about my position. And I was like, I have DACA. And they were like, okay, so what does that mean? I'm like, well, it means I can't do that. You know, there's a lot of limitations to what I can apply for. And so it was really frustrating. But thankfully I didn't, you know, I kept on I keep on keeping on, and I, you know, didn't listen to it, and I applied to Stony Brook, and thankfully I'm here now. But yeah, I think that was my biggest struggle, was just finding people that understood you know, what it is to be a DACA student.
Mm-hmm. I'm so sorry you had to go through that, but I'm so happy that you persevered, because there are naysayers. And my guidance counselor told me I wasn't college material. And, you know, when people tell you things like that, it takes some of the, well, for me, it took some of the air out of me a little bit. And I had to change my course, your plan, but it worked out for you. You got in and you're in your senior year. And now you have your story to tell, to influence people, to let them know. Don't let anyone stop you. Because the naysayers will always be there. Do you have supports in place now at Stony Brook?
I found a really good friend that was a little bit more, I guess, you know, involved in, that was my issues. Like my parents, they do as much as they can, but they're, you know, English is their second language. So it's really tough to, you know, have them, it's kind of like a culture shock when it comes to university and all of what it is to join college. So I found a friend that is also DACA, and he has helped me tremendously, thankfully. So I've been, you know, doing that, and I educate myself. I Google and I keep up with everything that has to do with DACA to, you know, to stay updated. So yeah.
Thank you so much.
I have a experience to share. So I work for Northwell Health, and lately I've just lost tremendous respect for that organization. I've been there for several years now, and I remember when I finished my BSW program, and you know, I was so excited and getting ready for grad school. I was told by the director of the social work program, she was like, you know, don't do at Northwell, oh, don't do social work, it doesn't pay. But you're a director of the social work department, so why is it not good for me, but it's good for you? Because you're white and I'm Black? And another incident came up recently that just really broke me as a social worker, where as a young social worker in grad school about to finish, I was so disappointed again with the organization, because it just showed that there's no inclusivity for people that look like me. There's no growth. I applied for a work study for an internship in the department, and it was right before COVID happened. And I understand, you know, COVID happened, we were all scared. All, you know, everyone went through this traumatic experience if you worked in a healthcare setting. And so I was supposed to start my internship in August. I never got back any response from this particular person. Then several weeks after, you know, I reached out to my field liaison at my MSW program, and I was like, listen, look, I don't think I'm gonna ever find, or I'm ever gonna get this internship, so I'm not gonna store my eggs in all in one basket. Can we just start looking somewhere else for me, because I'm gonna sit here and wait, and these people are not gonna respond to our emails. And so he ended up finding me a great placement at the mayor's office, and I have an amazing supervisor. And I just felt like, you know, I see all of these my white counterparts coming in, doing their fellowship program in every different department, but the Black girl that works at this facility couldn't even get an internship at the facility. And it just speaks volume, you know, as a woman of color, that they have all of these training, all of these meetings, all of these commercials stating, you know, we're inclusive, we're having training about diversity and all of this, but yet still there's lack of people that look like me. I think there's only one Black or two Black social workers in the whole department. And that is to just show you these organizations are full of it. They are full of it. They don't want to elevate us. We will always have this issue, because as you can see right now, we're living in serious and dangerous time in this country for us as people of color, where equal opportunity is not equal at all. That's in workplace, school, that's in the neighborhood that we live in, with redlining, they do so much to keep us out and to keep us down. And I am just really starting to sit in my uncomfortableness with being Black, because I felt like I was so proud of being Black. I wear my Blackness, and I'm an immigrant, and I'm proud of where I'm from. But I'm so frustrated, and it makes me so angry. I am so angry. I am so angry right now, and I am tired of tipping around white people to make them feel comfortable. I'm just really tired of it. I want to express myself, and I feel like that's trauma within itself, because we can't express ourselves. Because if we start to express ourselves, we come off, oh, why are you so upset? Why you're angry Black woman? Why can't I express myself in my anger? Y'all, they all do it, don't they? They all do it, and they do it violently. And I just feel like, as people of color, yes, we have come far, but it's not far enough. And when is enough? Because I'm tired. And I sure know that a lot more people that look like me and that's on the Zoom right now are feeling the same way. Like, I want to express myself. I'm tired of bottling it in and walking around pretending like I have to be happy and I have to smile for these people. Like, I'm not. So that's my frustration. And I'm just glad that you guys are talking about this, so we can just get the word out there that we are here and we're here to stay. We're not going anywhere. So it's time that this country and the many whites who have a problem with people of color, of 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 I'm just, I don't want to go offline, but thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you for your comment. And what you just said in regard to not, okay.
I just want to applaud Akila for everything that she said, because she in some ways took the words right out of my mouth. I just think that the fact that we have this space here to share things like this, and the fact that throughout the past 4 meetings that we've had, you continuously hearing from people of color and what we experience, it's like you're carrying the weight of 100 pounds on your back every single day in every single space that you're in. And to be in a profession like social work, when you thought that it was inclusive and then the reality hits you, it's very jarring, it's very disturbing, it's very hurtful. And I just want to applaud Akil and everybody, including Kenya and others who shared, because it's real. And I think that even in a profession that says to us in a false way to bring our authentic self, and we cannot be authentic even in a classroom setting or in our internships or in our places of employment, much less, feel safety in our homes and in our communities. It's so much to carry every single day. And I went to Lehman College in the Bronx, which I could say was a great experience for me as a person of color. My professors ran the gamut from being Asian to Hispanic to Black to white, but they seemed to me to all get it. They did not need a diversity class to speak about race and racism in those courses. Everything was around it. Everybody was free to speak, and they were not afraid of sharing the history of America and what America was really built on and the construct. So when I decided to go to graduate school at Fordham, reality hit me in a way that I absolutely did not expect. It was very hard for every case scenario to be about poor Black people, poor immigrants. Every case was about poor person and all of these things. And then every case scenario that were related to Black people, everybody seemed to turn to myself or the one or two other people of color in the room to provide the answer. And we can't provide the answer for all Black people. All of us have very vast and different experiences. And I think we all should not be surprised that if America that we know is built on racism and all the policies, the procedures, higher education, everything is built on racism, we should not be surprised that we all experience this in higher education. And for our white allies who are in this room and are here, I'm sure some of this is jarring for you to hear, but it's the reality of what your colleagues and people are experiencing. And I'm hoping that everybody can learn from it and that we push the social work and the institutions to do better, because damn well we deserve better and our clients deserve better. And I'm just glad that everybody is here and that we're able to share space. And I'm hoping that in my lifetime, because I've been in the field for 16 years, that at some point I'll be able to see some change. And I'm committed to doing whatever little bit that I could do. And I'm glad we're all here. And I'm hoping that together that we break down the door, we make some change, and we push the institutions to do better because they need to do better. So thank you for allowing me to share.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm wondering if I can share, I guess, similar and connected experience. Hi, everybody. My name is Sierra McPhail. I'm in my second year at Penn's social work program in Philadelphia. And I want to say I'm terrible with names, and I'm just getting off of field, so my mind is exploding. But the person who spoke before the last person, just expressing anger and frustration, I really appreciate that. And I just like sort of want to, if I can, sort of disarm you. Like I've been, of course, like we all are, in sort of like a journey towards growth in my program. And so I'm sort of just in the space that, like, if people are going to hate me, I might as well give them something to hate me about. And so I am just here leading with like my anger and frustration all the time. And in my full range of emotions, not only anger and frustration, but some of those things have led me and some other counterparts at Penn through Association of Black social workers to sort of challenge our school and ask them to put their money where their mouth is. And I'm not like trying to silver line anybody or be like tell anybody like this is the action that you should be taking at your school. I just want to let you know that like my mom did discrimination law and complaints for a long time, and something that she taught me was take advantage of moments, right? Like if there's this mass white guilt in the air, then take advantage of that. My school wants to say that they're about diversity and inclusion, so what are you going to do about diversity and inclusion? So we were able to like try and get grants for folks who were struggling with internet, black people in our program who were struggling with internet and just regular bills during COVID. We're like trying to negotiate a bigger budget just for our just for Association of Black social workers, so we have more spaces to have affinity groups and have discussions like this on our campus. And so I want to encourage those who have the energy to challenge their institutions with folks who are in numbers. I'm asking that you challenge in numbers because the risk is fewer, but challenge in numbers what your school is saying that they're doing, and hold them to it. If you have the energy, if you have the time, if you have the bandwidth. It's worked for us.
Thank you, Sierra. And I like what you just said in regard to challenging the schools, because I don't know if others have noticed in regard to diversity and inclusion and racial justice, it's like everybody's on this bandwagon now. And I'm saying it's a bandwagon as it pertains to them, because before this happened, you didn't hear, people were trying to get schools to become more socially active, social justice, Black Lives Matter, being involved in a variety of things. And now, you know, it's just what's real, who's true about being supportive. And that's why if they're saying that they are, yes, for diversity and inclusion, and this is what we have to do, then yes, you call them on it to find out, okay, you know what, we met these are the types of workshops, these are the types of groups we want to have, whatever the case may be. And yes, you need to go in there with other like-minded folks who you all can come together, have a plan of action, go to your dean, the associate dean, and talk about what it is that students want to do. And that's just really so important. You have to call them out on it, because for some people it's just rhetoric. That's all it is rhetoric. And so even going back to the person who was talking about, you know, we're here, we're getting our degrees. And there are white people who don't want us in their classrooms. And I saw in the newspaper, a young man was in London and he was at, I don't know what college he was at, but they were doing a group, and he said, the people in the group said that they feel better because he wasn't there. They feel more comfortable when Black people aren't around so that they can speak. And so, what do you mean by that? So what are you talking about the implications for the classroom? In other spaces, how about clients? How are you acting towards them when they speak? And so, yes, so if any of your schools are saying that they are, they want to do something within the school, call them out on it and get it done. And challenge your institutions. Thank you. Anybody else would like to say something?
Yeah, we have about 5 more minutes left. But if you want to share, please share. We'll be having also a next town hall that's also going to be discussing schools of social work, and that, you know, we're thinking about focusing that one again, you know, on curriculum, but also, you know, how to best support students through, you know, assessments and, you know, like people were saying today, you know, holding the institutions accountable, and what kind of policies and processes can we develop, and ways to not present barriers for BIPOC that are trying to get into, you know, and pursue their MSW. So please stay tuned in for those emails as well.
And what I like to say is just all really and truly hang on. Stay involved here because moves are going to be made. This isn't rhetoric here. Changes are going to start to be done after first you got to do the work and then compile the report and then the plan of action and then get moving. And so there will be change made for the next generation of social workers. When I said that in the beginning, I know that will be done as long as we stay together. And what I also want to say before we leave is that know how great you are. Why do they fear you? Because of your intelligence, because of your flair, because of all the positive things that you have going on within yourself. And so they want to cut you down. And you keep your head up, get around like-minded people, other people of color, come together. We have to come together, work together, love one another, have compassion for one another. Because in this day and time, it is dangerous for all of us out there. And if we don't support each other and really look out for one another, it's not a good thing. So I just want you to know the greatness within yourself and don't let anybody diminish your flower or your light. That's what I meant to say. Let your light shine Right. And Marion Williamson has, I forgot the name of her poem, but she has this poem that's so wonderful. And she speaks about what it is that people don't like about you is basically your light. And they want to dim your light. And you don't let anyone dim your light because you got a work to do. That's why you're in this field. It's not by circumstance. You're here specifically to get work done for the people that you're going to work with, our most vulnerable, who needs to see your smiling, inspirational, dynamic face in front of them to encourage them to keep on keeping on. And then you get your friends, all the people to help you keep on keeping on. And I need somebody to help me keep on keeping on. So we need to just support each other. So thank you, and hope we'll see you next time too. I'm sorry.
I got you, Dawn.
You got me. I know that's right, Sam. I got you.
I want to thank you, Dawn and Afsha, for facilitating this fantastic meeting. I want to thank everyone who participated and gave us the research we need to develop those goals. Just as a reminder, through these meetings, we're developing goals, then we'll be breaking into work groups, and the work groups will be creating action steps. And then our BIPOC social workers will be disseminating this to the stakeholders, CSWE, the National Association of Deans and Directors, and our New York State Deans and Directors. So that all of this work is working toward an end goal. I cannot thank all the BIPOC social workers who join us enough. You are amazing. Keep up the work. Thank you for sharing of yourselves and educating people. For our white allies who are on the call, I just want to remind you that really develop those self-reflective skills. If things are being said and you notice you're reacting a certain way, maybe you're feeling defensive or you're feeling like, well, this isn't me, this is other people. Like really reflect on those feelings and why do we feel this way? Why are we responding this way? Because what our BIPOC loved ones are sharing with us on this are their experiences. And white people, it's just assumed that your experience is going to be validated, and that's true. When you tell your experiences to people, that's the assumption, is that what you said is true and that it happened. And part of this change is that the same thing is true of our BIPOC social workers and our BIPOC loved ones, that their experiences are true and validated when they share them. So I want to thank everyone for coming. Join us for our next town hall. We will send you out the registration information. It will probably be our last one focused on schools of social work. And join us next week for our forum. Our forum is a space for mixed group dialogue. So it's a place for BIPOC and white social workers to speak together in small group settings. Each group is facilitated by a facilitator with white privilege and a BIPOC facilitator. And we're focusing on allyship next time. These are very powerful groups. It's based on the work Dawn and I did in our racial justice work at the School of Social Welfare at SUNY Albany. So join us next week. Join us next month. Keep doing the work and we will make a change. Thank you all.
Thank you.